So the Clair senses. So it begins. So Clair senses, we're looking at clairaudience, clairvoyance, claircognizance, clairlistenance, clairalienance, and clairgustance. Clairgustance. So the really common ones, the ones we kind of most know, would be sort of clairvoyance and clairaudience. Okay, so it's we think about the third eye. When it's activated, we can see spirits, and we can see past lives, and we can see these things. That would be clairvoyance. Now, what I've noticed is that we all have a preferred sense. Now, if you think about something like NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and we're looking at things like hypnotherapy, if you understand how your brain processes, we all have something called submodalities, and we have a main submodality. So when we're looking at the Clair senses, my suggestion is to begin your journey by just picking one of them. Or again, if you're fully into your journey, you could look at clearing all of them if you want, but it's really good to develop one and use that one as a route in. So for instance, clairvoyance and clairaudience really wasn't a thing for me for a very long time. I was more on the empath side. The empath side, I've got them written here, clairsentience. I'm sorry, I forget, I'm dyslexic, so I kind of it's clairsentience. So for me, I developed that, my sensing became very strong with clairsentience, and through that you then develop the other senses, if you like. So there's a lead sense. So if you think about humanity, you think about people when you're talking to, people will talk about, I see what you're saying, I hear what you mean, I feel you, okay? And so our brain naturally has a lead sense that we already use to process. So I always advise you use your brain's lead sense. So first of all, if you have a specific thing in mind, then brilliant, just pick that. If you do not have a specific thing in mind, the first thing you need to do is work out what is your brain's lead sense, submodality, if you're using something like NLP. So for this one, when you recall a memory, some people will recall the image first, and then from the image, they might then get the sense of smell, sense of physical sensation, sense of feeling, the warm day. So some people will think of a holiday and they'll think about how the beach looked, and then they'll think about how warm it was, and then the rest of the memory will come. So when you think about your memory, think about what you get first. And there's a couple of, I've got another way of finding this, but so other people, when you think about your memory, will think about, oh yeah, so think about holiday, and you'll think about, oh yeah, so I felt really good in this place. You think about the emotions, and then you'll start thinking about the, I was up in the mountains and the air, and then you'll picture the mountains. So for you, you're leading with your physical sense. Some people will think about the smell first. Oh, holiday, I can smell the sun cream, and then think about the next sense and the next sense. Some people, you'll actually think about the food first. So tends to be in Europe, we have much less taste and smell. That's more the Orient, China, Japan, Asia, and you tend to get people, it's more common amongst from that area. For Europeans, we tend to be more visual, more audio, or more emotions and feelings first. But so if you're finding it difficult, imagine this, right? Think about going shopping. Okay, so think about tomorrow, you're going to go shopping, and you're looking for something you really want to buy. You go into the shop. As you go into the shop, looking for this amazing item of clothing. Now, that item of clothing, first of all, when you're walking down the rack, are you touching the fabric, feeling everything as you go down first? And then you find something that feels nice, and let's have a look and see how it looks. So if you're one of the touchers, then just write down right now, clairsentience. Okay. As you're doing this, are you visual? Do you have an image in your mind of how you want to look? Some of you touchers, you'll be thinking about a big warm jumper or something along those lines. But so thinking about how you look. If you're more into the visual side of things, first, that's the first thing you want to see. What makes you look, what looks nice, and now try one on that fits good and is comfortable. So first of all, look, then comfort. For you, write down clairvoyance. Okay, and if you're going in and you're thinking about, okay, but you want feedback first, it's kind of like, okay, I'm going to go in, but I want someone to say blah 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 blah. Okay, we've got an issue around opinions. Make your own mind up. We're looking more at clairaudience. Right now, again, different chakras, and again, we'll look at this in the chakras. Just straight out for the clairaudience, we actually have ear chakras that you'll need to work on. And that's a really good one to activate those. Clairvoyance, we're looking at the third eye, but also little eye chakras. Clairsentience, we're looking at the empath thing. So we're actually looking there, we could talk about the heart, but actually the solar plexus is a really good one because that's our energy connection to humanity. And then we've got the taste or smell, we've got clairalienance, clairalienance. Is smell, and then clairgustance. Clairgustance would be taste. So when we're looking at the very first layer to the blocks here is, if we've got our preferred one, what is the block? What would it mean to use that? So for instance, if I can suddenly hear spirits, ghosts, they wake up in the middle of the night and hear dead people talking to me. Imagine that, and when you connect to that, think about where you feel that. Okay, so if you're doing the audio, think about how you feel if you would hear it. If you're doing clairvoyance, you're doing the visual, think about, okay, so if I were to suddenly see a ghost, I would see dead people all the time. How would I feel when I have that? If it's claircognizance, if I could suddenly feel what these beings wanted. Okay, feeling is a lot more personal, and so if you can imagine feeling how they feel, there's a belief and there's a feeling that they can feel you. You can't hide. Right? I can hide if I've got audio, I can listen and they don't know I'm there. If I've got clairvoyance, I can see and I can hide and they don't know I'm there. When I'm an empath, or when I have empathic sensing, if I can feel them, there's a feeling that they can feel me. And so there's this more direct expression, which can be a little bit more scary. So there's a little bit more of a thing there. So whatever it is, first layer to this one is just connecting to that feeling and feel the heaviness. Where do you feel it in your body? So for me, I'll do visual. All right, so I can see these beings. Imagine they can see me, screw it. And I can feel this kind of heaviness and it blocks. So at the moment, you have the level that you have. Right? So on a scale of 1 to 10, there's actually psychic gates. So a professional psychic has around, scale of 1 to 10, you have about 8 or 9 gates, psychic gates open. You can actually have up to 20. Problem is when they get too open, we need to have big filters on them. So where you are, imagine that it's more total than that. And even at where I am, if I feel it's more total than that, there's this kind of like, because I'm not there yet, so there's got to be some resistance. Okay, so I don't know what the resistance is. I don't need to know what the resistance is. I can just feel the resistance. So just work out where you are, or don't feel where you are, at the level you are, and imagine that doubles. And it's total. There's this sense of resistance or difference in that feeling. Okay, so that difference, where do you feel that difference between now and between here and there? Where do you feel that difference in your system? Okay, so for me, I feel it around here, around my thyroid, thymus. So what you can do is connect up to the 13th chakra, hold that feeling. So divine source of all love, I hold this in love. Heal me, and just imagine light, connect into whatever deity you like. For me it would be something like Christ consciousness or maybe Amma. and I just connect into that love. And so what we're looking at here is this sense of consciousness, and this consciousness is separation. Okay, so it's conditioning. I don't know what the conditioning is, but I can feel the conditioning, and if I can feel the conditioning, I can hold it in my system. And as I hold it in my system, that conditioning is separation. So if I bridge in something like Christ consciousness or angelic consciousness or compassion or love, the highest level or highest energy that you have access to, we can hold it. And as we hold it, just be present. And you can let it dissipate that way. Okay, now I have a load of blocks here that we're going to talk about, but so that's just one layer. So for all of you, pick one sense, write it down, and start. And when you want to meditate, so meditate in the morning. If you really want to work on this during your meditations in the morning, do this each time. Each time we'll get a little bit stronger, and a little bit stronger, and a little bit stronger. But each time, feel where you are, imagine it being total. So I'm here, total clairvoyance, the imagination of it would be here. So now my difference is this, so I take this part, where do I feel this difference? Now I meditate into that, and I just hold it in love, and I just allow it to decompress and just deconstruct. Okay, so this is one version of meditation. I like to do it through chakra breathing, that's a nice one. But, so, the next part, the blocks themselves, so common and key blocks. Now, again, on the subscription, I'm doing this in a slightly different way. Okay, I'll put these here and I'll put them on the subscription as well. So my core thing, and this is important, the thing that I do the most with, the most advanced work that I do now is related to deconstruction of the incarnational identity, and that's something, it's related to our expression of love. So where I was talking in the previous video about flow, when we're born we have no separation. We don't even know that we're separate from our mother. We feel that she's the same thing, and it's not until you finally, the first time you get cold and I feel alone, I feel cold, or I'm hungry, all of our sense of I comes from a sense of lack. So you don't know, if your mum was just there perfectly holding you all the time, you fed whenever you wanted to, went to the loo whenever you wanted to, you would never know that you were separate from her, because there's never a point at which you feel she's not present. The moment that you feel she's not present is when you need something and it's not there, as a infant, as a 6-week-old child or a 6-month-old child. So the moment you feel she's not there, you then suddenly feel she's separate from you. And the moment you feel she's separate from you, this is the seed of your identity. And it becomes your egoic identity. Your ego is always based on separation. It's always based on lack. So we have this egoic identity that is based on lack and separation from love and separation from divinity. And that egoic identity holds all of the condition that separates us from our spiritual gifts, because our spiritual gifts are in our heart, our flow of love. So if we connect into the separation of the deconstruct the core wounds at the base of identity, we start undoing that separation and we start reconnecting. It's part of the, well, there's a lot of things we can do it. So for me, the stuff I work with is, again, with you teachers and healers, it's heart awakening. So after your awakening, after you've lost your egoic shell, you've completed your incarnational journey, we then continue the awakening journey. We go into heart awakening, which is the kind of the final part. That's the bit. Reason I'm explaining that here is because there's a number of core wounds, and I think it's a really nice thing to do where we're looking at blocks related to clairlicence, claircognizance, is actually those blocks are related to separation, and they're related to our experience of separation within our incarnational ego. And this is, sorry, probably got a little bit highbrow very, very quickly there. So on the subscription, I might do it on the subscription, I might do it on the advanced. There is a way of taking the blocks, specific blocks to these sensing, back through the construction of the ego, the initial block in the first place. So here I'm just going to list the kind of core area blocks, but on the subscription I'll go through that in a little bit more detail. I don't want it to be too big though, that's the problem, so I might do a masterclass or a workshop. So I'll put a little thing in there if you want to do a workshop, then you can sign up, and we'll make it a little side project. Otherwise, you could just spend the next year working on one of these things. So, first of all, the major blocks that come up are going to be related to physical versus spiritual, or spiritual versus physical. I am in a physical world, there is a spiritual world, and we are not in the same place. So, if you think about it from a karmic point of view, 1 minute you're a soul or an angel, you're a soul, and you're in heaven, or in Soul Kingdom, or in divinity, whatever you want to call it, floating around, and then suddenly you are on Earth. And the moment you incarnate, with the pain and the suffering and humanity and everything we pick up through the genetics and through the bloodline and everything, suddenly you feel incredibly separate, because for the first time you are separate. You actually are separate. You're trapped in your body. You feel complete separation from divinity, massive amount of grief. It's where libido and sexuality comes from. However, the desire to reconnect. However, we now feel that we don't belong back in divinity. Although divinity is unconditional love, we feel we don't belong there. We feel we have to earn it. We have to be a good person. We have to, all these things that we can do, we have probably done wrong, means that we're not going to get, we have this fear of judgment, and that is that we don't belong. Okay? So the very first part is this sense of abandonment and separation. I feel abandoned by divinity. I feel separate from divinity. So, but that kind of comes in, first manifesting of that is with this kind of fear of death. So the first blocks, and again, I'll put them underneath, is that I have to die to see, hear, feel. So whatever, just if you write down the one that you're working on, say for me, I'm going to do, do you know what? I'm going to do clairvoyance, might as well. So for me, it'll be, I have to die to see spirits. I have to die to see the spirit world. I have to die to see God. I have to die to see. Okay. You might want, I have to die to hear, I have to die to know, Clair, actually yeah, claircognizance, that's a really nice one, I have to die to know, whatever you're doing, okay. Then the other one is, if I can see spirits, if I can see angels, if I can see the spirit world, that I am dead. So a lot of survival conditioning comes in here, because we know that we can't see it while we're on this side. So we must be dead if we're there. So this whole survival thing comes up. And then another one would be, okay, so I'm not dead, but it really can't be safe, because maybe I'm dead, or maybe I have to die, or maybe something on there will want to kill me, not sure. So we have this whole thing around, it's not safe to hear, see, whatever. Okay. Now, the next one would be the kind of spiritual warfare comes up. So we've now got the idea that there's this conditioning in humanity that the closer I am to God, the closer I am to the devil. And it's quite an old school thing that says, that used to say that. And when we hear about things like exorcists and saints will quite often, and we talk about Joan of Arc, or saints where they had a closer relationship with the devil, a closer relationship with God, the devil would come in and start harassing them and attacking them and didn't want them to be so holy. And we had this whole thing with spiritual warfare, that the more holy I am, the more pure I am, the more dark forces will try and attack me and hurt me because they're against my light. Apparently, shadow can attack light. It's a narrative a lot of you will agree with. You try watching a shadow attack a candle flame. It doesn't quite work that way. However, spiritual warfare is a very real thing. We're looking at fifth dimensional stuff. So I must hide from dark spirits. So that's a big one that comes up. So I must hide my ability to see from demons, entities, ghosts, evil. That's one. And then I must hide myself from demons, entities, ghosts, evil. I must hide my family from demons, entities, ghosts, evil. If I can see demons, entities, ghosts and evil, I will be destroyed, murdered, killed, imprisoned, caught, tortured, harassed, damned, sent to hell. Okay. So these ones come in. Again, I'm going to put a list here. The next kind of layer that come in, so we've then got a lot of the religious ones. Now, even if you're not religious, You have it in your bloodline. Even if you're not religious, you have it in your incarnational past, you have it in your karmic past. Religion has covered the entire globe. At certain points, everyone has spirituality and everybody has religion in different lifetimes. You know, Christianity took the earth. Lots of wars and stuff is committed in the name of religion, and part of our incarnational path is to have that. You know, you could have been a Viking, you could have been a Roman. There's always going to be religion in there. So then the next thing is that religion owns your spirituality, because it would have been done through religion. So if you can imagine going back in time to say medieval times, where everything was done through the church, and anything wasn't through the church was anti the church. So we have this whole thing that, you know, and again, it comes up in some of the others, that fairies, witches, pixies, elves, if they existed, you don't have to believe in them, but at one point you believed in them, you know, and again, 16th century, 17th century, where we believed in these things, and you believed that they had magic, but it must have been evil, it must have been pagan. Pan, we have this idea of the goat with the little flute. So all of these things are against the church. So I have God on one side and the church on the other side, and anything that's not God and the church is evil. So we then have this fear, and you also have this belief that to get into heaven you have to go through the church, and the priest has to do it. So so we have this set of blocks. My clairvoyance, whatever you've got, is owned by the church. My clairvoyance is owned by God. My clairvoyance is owned by Catholicism. My clairvoyance is owned by the Roman, whatever churches. And check different churches. So you can check it's owned by Islam, check it's owned by Judaism, check it's owned by church, check different religions. It could be owned by Hinduism, it could be owned by Gnosticism, it could be owned by Valhalla, the Vikings, whatever it is. So just check different religions, and my religion, my clairaudience is owned by, and you might find that actually your clairvoyance isn't owned, but your clairaudience is. So you can check some of the others, and particularly with Valhalla, with the Norse mythology, they had a thing where they would take their eyes in order to have deeper spiritual sensing through the runes. Okay. Then when we've got another layer of religion is the sense of religious purity. So as we're looking back at sensing being this ability to flow, we now have a lot of judgment and criticism that comes in with religious doctrine. Okay, now I'm not saying that it is wrong, I'm not saying that it is right, I am just saying that if it is a belief system that you have, it could be a belief system you have, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a belief system that divinity has. Okay, so if you are watching this and you are Christian, or you are a part of a particular religion, nothing wrong with that at all, absolutely beautiful. Point being is sometimes we hold beliefs, because we're only human, that maybe God doesn't necessarily agree with. And that's not a bad thing, okay? But it is something which we want to clear in order to have a closer relationship with divinity. So for instance, I have to be a saint to be connected to divinity. I have to be a saint to be connected to God. Okay? And I have to be a saint to be worthy of the gift of seeing. I have to be a saint to be worthy of the gift of hearing. I have to be a saint to be worthy of the gift of feeling, empath, so whatever it is that you're working on. Okay. Then, if I can, imagine now an angel turns up, or God speaks to you, an angel speaks in your ear. Could you turn around and say no after that? So tonight I go to bed, and in the middle of the night, an angel turns up and says, Rue, you have to go to South America. Yay, I'm going. Rue, you can never go to South America. I'm like, damn it. Okay, so can I ever turn it down? So the second that I have a belief that the second I activate my sensing and I have the ability to hear what God wants me to do, I then lose my ability. So if you imagine being a child, now going back to that, as a child you have freedom until your parents find out what you're doing and then they tell you you've got to go to bed. Okay, so we have this part of us that has a mirror between our parents when we're children and God when we're adults. So when we're children, our parents created us and everything in our life is dependent on them. All the abundance we have, the holidays we have, when we go to bed, when we eat, if we get to live, our existence is dependent on them. When we're an adult, that's divinity. But our conditioning and our identity is very, very similar. So when we learn as a child that I can do whatever I want and I can play with this sug and I can poke this poo with a stick and I can do things I'm not meant to do as long as they don't see me, the second they see me, I now have to behave. As an adult, we also have this belief that the second that I become pure, the second I connect to divinity, I have to stop drinking, I can't have sex before marriage, I have to stop partying, all these things I want to do. What if divinity doesn't want me to do it? And if we look at the stereotypes of very, very saintly, godly people, we generally have poor people living in an ashram wearing monk's clothes and sandals, eating gruel, and don't drink alcohol, etc, etc, etc. So suddenly I have this, if I connect to divinity, if my claircognizance is activated, if my clairlistenescence is activated, whatever it is I'm working on, as soon as I do that, I will literally lose the ability to have control in my life. I will lose sovereignty in my life. Massive resistance that we all have. So check in for that one. I have to be pure to be worthy of seeing, hearing, whatever. I am worthy of the gift of, and then just check in, I am worthy of the gift of seeing. I am worthy of the gift of knowing, claircognizance. And my version of it is the same as divinity's version. That's a very important one. I am worthy of the ability. And also, to sound really random, check that you're worthy of rejecting claircognizance. If God was to give it to you and you were, or divinity was to give it to you and you were to reject it, so if you don't get a yes on that, so I'm not allowed to reject it, you're still in resistance. Because if I'm not allowed to reject it, there's a belief there that it's more important than I am, and I don't have control and I don't have authority over it. This is a massively interesting one. So divinity can have it, am I allowed to reject it? If I'm not allowed to reject it, then then there's no flow there, because there must be a fear of what would happen if I had it. Okay. So, yeah, we've done the church. And then the last one we're going to do on this one is persecution. Okay, so we've got situations in past lives, again, that will come up in a couple of the other, or particularly one of the other, the DNA module. But if we look at the idea of reincarnation, there have been a lot of times where we might have persecuted others and have persecution. This is one that is very important, and it's one I do repeat, and I do apologise. I repeat a lot of the same stuff in a lot of these videos because it's really important. Each video has to be standalone as an individual lesson. So, I may have the classic burnt as a witch. I had these amazing abilities and somebody, probably a guy, and I was probably a beautiful woman, came along and burnt me as a witch. Okay, because I didn't do what they wanted me to do. Now, most people that have some type of religious persecution of their spiritual abilities have also karmically got the other side of it, where they have burnt. So, interestingly enough, there's something called a St. Michael's Cross block. And this is where I actually had one in this lifetime. I actually created it myself. So it's where we create a block ourselves. So if you can imagine a peasant or a person in the 1600s, 1500s, around the time of the Spanish Inquisition, whatever it is, deeply religious, okay? And they believe that all spiritual gifts come from God or the devil. Okay, and suddenly they can hear people thinking, they can hear people talking, and they don't feel very pure. They go out, they're drinking, they're doing this stuff, and they have these psychic abilities. But because they don't feel that they're a saint, they now think that their gifts and abilities must come from the devil, and they are terrified that they are going to burn in hell. Okay. Now, because of that, they start persecuting everyone else that they can find, because they're trying to prove to themselves that they are on God's side. But they've got this fear, they've got this anger, and because they're now going into the darkness, they start getting more and more connection and more attunement with slightly darker situations, darker beings and darker entities are coming in. And as these darker beings and darker entities are coming into their spiritual sensing, they're like, oh, oh hell, I need to prove that I'm good, so I'm going to find more witches, and I'm going to hurt them, and I'm going to kill them, and I'm going to torture them because I'm trying to show the dark forces that I'm good. And it's coming from a really screwed up place. But then in another lifetime, they then might incarnate as one of the people that they hurt and get hurt themselves. So a lot of times when we have this religious persecution in a block, you heal the block, but you need to do a past life process and go back and heal the trauma where you were the evil doer. Okay, it's very, very important to do both sides of the coin if we're going to allow the energy to flow, to do the forgiveness process. A lot of the time, if you've got clients that come to you and they've got, yeah, I was a witch in a past life and I was hurt and I was tortured, a lot of the time we'll look at it and you'll come in with the patriarchal abuse, which is absolutely fine and no pun intended. Well, I say not fine, but okay, so that's healed. But we then need to complete the healing by doing the other side of the coin on that one. It's super, super, super important. Now, the St. Michael's Cross block is where the person has this, they're hearing these voices, they pray, and they shut down their own spiritual gifts in order to make sure that they stay religious, if that makes sense. So if you can imagine, from a religious point of view, if you're spiritual and you can sense and you can pick up on beings and things, maybe it's an angel, maybe it's not, but maybe you'll get it wrong. And if you get it wrong, you're gonna go to hell. This is the belief, okay? So it would be better to be completely ignorant, have no sensing ability, give your life to God and just hope for the best, but in your ignorance, you'll be forgiven for anything you get wrong, and you go to heaven, because God can't look at you and go, ah, you knew better. Imagine an angel turns up, but it turns out it wasn't an angel, and you didn't understand, and you got it wrong, you did the wrong thing, you listened to the wrong being, you listened to a demon thinking it was an angel, and you screwed up. This is where the St. Michael's Cross thing comes in. So that can be a really important one to undo. Also check for excommunicated, check for I am in hell, and look at any contracts that come up with beings. So again, we'll look at that later on, but we do have beliefs that we've incarnated under authority of other beings as well. Okay, so you can look at undoing this one with religion. You can look at, I'm incarnated under the authority of the church, I'm incarnated under the authority of, and check the different religions and check the names of different beings, positive and negative. If, for instance, you were in a situation where life got pretty dark, pretty dark, maybe a soldier, maybe you were a knight, maybe a Knights Templar, and you ended up in a torture chamber and you were the torturer, you might start feeling that there's something wrong with you and that you have an affinity, or that maybe your incarnation has something to do with evil beings. And it may not be true, it may be true. So undoing and just checking anything that resonates with you, and I'm not going to put a list of those down, but just check those. It's a very important one to check. Right, hope that makes sense. On the subscription, we'll just go through this and we'll actually do some digging and we'll undo some of these things now. So look forward to seeing you in the next video, if that's the thing you're on. Thank you.